Shalom, shalom. This is Davon Mays here, and I want to say peace and blessings to the Tanakh Talk family. Shout out to William. How you doing? Thank you for allowing me to finish up the series. It's been a long time. We did Isaiah 53, verses 1 through 11, bit by bit, verse by verse on your platform, but we never finished verse 12. So here it is, and I want to jump right into it. Again, shout out to the Tanakh Talk family. And peace and blessings to you, William, for allowing me to bring these lessons to the table. So there's 5 points that I want to address in this chapter. Isaiah 53 and 12, it says, "Therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong." So, of course, Christians will tell you this is about Jesus, but I want to know what spoil he divided. The second point is he has poured out his soul unto death. What exactly does that mean? Point three, and he was numbered with the transgressors. What does that mean? Point four, and he bore the sins of many. What does that mean? And made intercession for the transgressors. What does that mean? So these verses, of course, can be interpreted, but when we have scripture in the Tanakh to back up why that why exactly they do not point to Jesus, we can get to the bottom of the matter. So I broke this up into two parts. So this is part one, and let's dive right into this. So point one, therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong. So who will divide portions, and where will they do this? So this is the question, right? Ezekiel 45 and 1. Moreover, when you shall divide by lot the land for inheritance, you shall offer an oblation unto the Lord, a holy portion of the land. The length shall be the length of 25,000 reeds, and the breadth shall be 10,000. This shall be holy, and all the borders thereof round about. So this portion is in the Holy Land. So Israel has to be back in the land to divide this up. Ezekiel 47, 21 through 23. So shall ye divide this land according to you, unto you, according to the tribes of Israel. And it shall come to pass that ye shall divide it by lot for an inheritance unto you and to the strangers that sojourn among you, who shall beget children among you. So again, we see a dividing up of something, and Israel is back in the land. Now, this is not talking about dividing up a portion with the strong, but what I am showing you is there are going to be portions divided in the future, and this is not a spiritual thing. This is a physical thing. They're going to physically have to be back in the land to do this, because the whole concept of a messianic era is Israel back in their land, sovereign. They have a king, they have a kingdom, and it's not the spiritual, the kingdom of heaven is within you concept. It's actually going to be something that everybody can physically see. Because remember, in the book of Luke, it says in Luke 17, I believe verse 20 and 21, they asked him, "Where is this kingdom?" And he said, "Oh, you won't be able to see it. Nobody will say, 'Come see where it is.' It's going to be within you. It doesn't come with observation." This is definitely something that can be observed. Ezekiel 48 and 29, this is the land which you should divide by lot unto the tribes of Israel for an inheritance, and these are their portions, said the Lord. So again, we see just in Ezekiel alone, there's going to be some things divided up, right? This would be an earth-based portion and not the kingdom of John 18:36. He's Jesus claims he's king of, right? Because he says his kingdom is not part of this world. So he won't be dividing up any of these portions with Israel, because his kingdom is not of this world. So this just shows you the difference in the concept of a messianic era, that the portions that's going to be divided up are going to be physical in the land, and Israel will be sovereign, and it will be on earth, not, not of this world, as he says in John 18:36. Zechariah 14:1. Now, we know this chapter, there's going to be some wars going on. Actually, even back in chapter 12 of Zechariah, there's a war. It says, behold, the day of the Lord cometh, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee. Now, again, I just want to reiterate this. John 18:36, Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight so that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not from here. So this would be an earth-based portion and not the kingdom of John 18:36 Jesus claims he's king of. It's a typo, right? So let me fix that. Okay. So who will divide the portions and where will they do this? Isaiah 61:7. For your shame, you shall have double, and for confusion, they shall rejoice in their portion. Therefore, in their land, they shall possess the double. Everlasting joy shall be unto them. Isaiah 60:5. Then thou shalt see and flow together, and thine heart shall fear and be enlarged, because the abundance of the sea shall be converted unto thee. The wealth of the Gentiles shall come unto thee. Isaiah 60:11. Therefore, thy gate shall be open continually. They shall not be shut day nor night, that men may bring unto thee the wealth of the Gentiles, that their kings may be brought. We see the dividing of the land and the wealth of the nations among the Israelites. So we don't see any dividing on a spiritual level. It's all physical in the land of Israel. So when Jesus is supposed to return, if you're going off the book of Thessalonians, he's gonna, you're gonna be caught up in the air and be with the Lord, right? How are you going to divide the spoil of the kings down here on the earth if you're caught up in the air, according to the book of Thessalonians? So Isaiah 53 is cherry picked only in the verses about him being bruised and beaten up and things like that, and bearing your sins. But and we've covered all those verses previously, because this is chapter 53 verse 12. We've covered verses 1 through 11. But when it comes to simple things like this that require a physical explanation, Christians really ain't going to quote you Isaiah 53:12. They're going to pick and choose what pieces of Isaiah 53 they're going to talk about. He shall see his seed. I don't really want to talk about that, because that's addressed in Isaiah 54. They know Isaiah 53, but what does Isaiah 54 say? It talks about somebody having children, just like it does in Isaiah 53, and that discussion is expounded upon. But again, they want to pick and choose exactly where they want to take you in Isaiah 53. Point 2, he hath poured out his soul unto death. What exactly does this mean? This is the catchphrase that Isaiah 53 in the playbook of the missionaries, right? He poured out his soul unto death. That means he died for your sin. But let's dig into this. We see the pouring out of your soul is always prayer. You cannot literally pour out your soul, right? It's a figure of speech. Job 30:16. And now my soul is poured out upon me. The days of affliction have taken hold upon me. Job did not die when his soul was poured out. He was simply in agony. Why is this ignored? Because it doesn't fit the narrative of he poured out his soul unto death. Because we're going to get to that. Because, the people will say, well, it says unto death. It does. But we're going to address that. But the concept of pouring out your soul is kind of like, not necessarily complaining, but you're making a serious, intense plea. If you were begging for your life, you're pouring out your soul. Please don't hurt me. Please don't kill me. You're pouring out your soul. Please help me. I'm begging you. I need this money. Whatever it is, you're pouring out your soul. You don't have to die, but it can be said as you're pouring out your soul. 1 Samuel 1:15. Not so, my Lord, Hannah replied. I am a woman who was deeply troubled. I have not been drinking wine or beer. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. She was accused of being drunk. She said, no, I'm not drunk. I have not been drinking wine or beer. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. Did she die? Nope. She ended up having a baby. She was not in danger of death at all by pouring out her soul to the Lord. She says, I am a woman who is deeply troubled. I'm not interpreting anything. This is what the text says. It's on the screen. Hannah did not die by pouring out her soul. She was praying intensely. Pouring out your soul as a figure of speech. 1 Samuel 1:10. She was in bitterness of soul and prayed unto the Lord and wept sore. It tells you exactly what it means. She was deeply troubled. She was in bitterness of soul and she prayed, but she said she was pouring out her soul. So when I said it's an intense prayer, I didn't make it up. It tells you what she was doing in 1 Samuel chapter 1. Then she goes on to explain to the person who accused her of being drunk. She said, no, I'm very sad. I'm deeply troubled, but I'm pouring out my soul to the Lord. And verse 10 tells you it was prayer. She was in bitterness of soul and prayed unto the Lord and wept sore. She was crying, deeply troubled, but that equated to her saying, I am pouring out my soul. Psalm 42:4. These things I remember as I pour out my soul, how I used to go to the house of God under the protection of the mighty one with shouts of joy and praise among the festive throng. He was simply praying when he poured out his soul. He's remembering things, but he's pouring out his soul. He didn't die. He didn't have to die to pour out his soul. We see other verses that use a figure of speech to explain a situation. It means to lay bare, to leave destitute, discover, empty, make naked, pour out, raise, spread, self, uncover. Like to be, some people say, you got me open. You got me wide open. Like I'm pouring my heart. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm exposed. I'm pouring out my soul. I'm giving it up. There's so many different ways to say this. When people hear a real good song and somebody's singing and it touches their soul, they say he was giving it up. He's pouring out his song. He's pouring out his soul. Right? He's pouring out those tunes. He's pouring out his voice. Spreading himself. When you spread yourself, you open yourself up, letting it all hang out. She got me open, exposed. I'm empty from crying. These is all concepts of pouring out your soul or to be poured out. Psalm 37:35, Leviticus 20:18. These are the different ways of saying the same thing. Something is very intensely being done, and you're just giving all your emotions. You're putting your all into something. You're pouring out your soul. Ara, leave destitute, discover, empty, make naked, pour out, raise, spread, self uncover again. She quickly emptied her jar. Emptied. When you empty something, you pouring it out, right? 1 Samuel 1:10, she was in bitterness of soul and prayed unto the Lord and wept soul. She emptied herself out before God. That's what this is talking about. To empty something out. Your soul, you're pouring out your soul. You're emptying out your prayers unto the Lord. That's what Hannah said, right? It's not hard to comprehend. You just got to know what's being spoken about, and we're using scripture to back it up. I don't have to give my opinions or my interpretation. Check out the screen and check out the references. Lamentations 2 and 12. They say to their mothers, where is corn and wine? When they swoon as the wounded in the streets of the city, when their soul was poured out into their mother's bosom. Now, this could be seen as dying, but is it a sacrifice? This is not an execution, right? So, right here is the word that basically means to cast up, gush out, pour out, shedder, out, slip. This is 82:10 in the Strongs. It's a different word here for pour out. But this can also be something being given up, right? If you're pouring out your soul into your mother's bosom, it could mean that they simply died in their mother's arms, right? They died on their mother's lap. Lamentations is a book of, it's a problem going on, right? They're starving. Where's the corn? Where's the wine? They're thirsty, right? They're wounded in the streets. This is when the temple is being destroyed and Israel's being ransacked, right? So I'm gonna be honest and say pouring out your soul in this verse can be looked at as somebody dying. But even if you want to apply pouring out your soul with, in this context, with Isaiah 53, it doesn't mean that they had to die to pour out their soul. Because we read that my righteous servant will justify the people with his knowledge. Doesn't say anything about his death or his execution or his blood. And we're going to get to why, because remember, it says he made intercession. Well, could that intercession or that supplication be his intense prayer or the pouring out of his soul? So I want to cover all angles here. I don't need to leave things out. It clearly says that their soul was poured out in their mother's bosom. But pouring out your soul is not a sacrifice. We don't even have to get into all the details about he wasn't brought to the temple, no blood hit no altar, he wasn't sacrificed by a priest. He was outside of the place to sacrifice. He wasn't an animal. He wasn't 1 year old. He was blemished. Like, besides all the facts, right? Because nowhere does it in the Torah does it say that the sacrifice have to be spiritually unblemished, right? It's clearly talking about animals that have physical blemishes on them. We know Jesus was beaten up and flogged and crowns of thorn twisted on his head. He was not an unblemished sacrifice. First of all, he wasn't a sacrifice. He wasn't burned. The sacrifices are burned. Like, there's so many problems with trying to make him a sacrifice. So again, there's a different word here for poured out, but it's not an execution or a sacrifice in this context in Lamentations 2:12. So I just want to be clear that I want to be fair, because some people say, oh, you didn't cover this verse, or this verse says the same thing. No, we can cover all the verses because we don't need to hide nothing. So what does unto death mean? He poured out his soul unto death. Oh, that means he died. Well, does it? Does this mean you have to die to pour out your soul into death? It is simply a figure of speech, just like your soul being in the dust while alive. This means you are being humbled and you are literally on the ground, or your soul is in anguish, right? 2 Kings 20:1. In those days, Hezekiah was sick unto death. He was on the verge of death, but he did not die. So pouring out your soul unto death means on the verge of dying, but not actually dying. It's just saying something is very severe. Like, I'm powerfully sorry. I'm dead serious. I die laughing, or you kill me when you do that. These are all figures of speech to make a serious point. And what it says is, and near death, lamut. And it says he was near death, but unto death doesn't mean he died. Near death can be, like I said, a very intense moment. Now, this one talks about him actually being sick. It doesn't say he was pouring out his soul into death, but it's just saying he was sick. But again, unto death does not mean they died. It can just mean a very severe moment, right? In those days, here's some different translations. In those days, Hezekiah became sick and was at the point of death. English Standard Version. New King James Version. In those days, Hezekiah was sick and near death. Brenton Septuagint translation. In those days was Ezekias sick even to death, but he didn't die. And by the way, for those who use the Septuagint, only thing that was actually translated was the first 5 books of Moses. The rest of the people who made translations of the Septuagint only used that name when they translated it into the Greek, but the original was only the first 5 books. You can look up Jerome's commentary on that, and he was a 3rd century Christian, so you don't have to believe me. Sick unto death. Kala, beseech, be diseased, put to grief, be grieved, be grievous, infirmity. Oh, sorry about that. A primitive root, properly to be rubbed or worn, hence figuratively to be weak, sick, afflicted, or causatively to grieve, make sick, also to stroke, and flattering, entreat, beseech, entreat unto death, right? Poured out his soul unto death. He was entreating, but it was a very serious entreating. Disease, put to grief, be grieved, be grievous, infirmity, entreaty, lay to put to pain, pray, make prayer, be fall, make sick, sore, be sorry, make suit, supplication, women in travail, become weak, be wounded, but not dead. None of these say death. Just like severe things, weak, sick, afflicted, okay, but none of them say dead. Isn't that interesting? Unto death, crying, be dead body, man, one, put to worthy of death, destroyer. Death and crying are used to explain the same situation. Now, near death, be dead body, there's some context to that. So this right here does say be dead body, worthy of death, destroyer. But again, when it's talking about pouring out your soul unto death, when it clearly says that he made supplication, this tells you what he was doing when he was pouring out his soul unto death. What does it mean to entreat and to make supplication? Right? What does that mean? Death and crying are used to explain the same situation. Proverbs 19:18. And do not desire his death. Spare for his crying. Proverbs 19:18. Chasten thy son while there is hope, and let not thy soul spare for his crying, right? Look at the Christian Standard Bible. It says, discipline your son while there is hope, and don't set your heart being the cause of his death. How does one say the cause of his death and the other one says spare for his crying? Aramaic Bible in plain English. Chasten your son because there is hope, and do not cast out your soul to his shame. Britain Septuagint. Chasten thy son for so he shall be hopeful and be not exalted in thy soul to haughtiness. Look at all these these different definitions or translations. When the NAS says don't desire his death, but the KJV equates it with crying. So death and crying are kind of, cross-referenced with each other. We know crying is not dying. How did they get death out of this? Because when you're crying, you're doing what? You're pouring out your soul unto death. You're very intense with it. Proverbs 19 in the 1599 GNV. Chasten thy son while there is hope, and let not thy soul spare for his murmuring. Murmuring is like a complaint. It's like crying, right? MEV, chasten your son while there is hope. Let not your soul spare for his crying. NLV, punish your son if he needs it while there is hope. Do not worry about his crying. But the NAS says, do not desire his death. Here's another concept, Judges 16:16. And it came to pass when she pressed him daily with her words and urged him so that his soul was vexed unto death. Now, who was being nagged in Judges 16:16? Delilah was nagging Samson unto death. Did he die? Not for a while. With such naggings, the NIV, with such naggings, she prodded him day after day, until he was sick to death of it. Sick to death of it. Vexed to death. His soul was vexed to death, or he was sick to death from nagging. So unto death in itself does not mean you actually died. Just like when somebody say over my dead body, right? They just mean that's a figure of speech, meaning I don't want to do that. That's not going to happen, right? You really got to put in the context of the culture and how things are worded and how things translate into English, of course, too. So did Samson die, or was he seriously irritated with her complaining? Proverbs 21:19. Better to live in a desert than with a quarrelsome and nagging wife, because you get sick to death of it. She vexes your soul unto death. Pretty sure a lot of people can relate. And I'm pretty sure husbands can be nagging too. Children can be nagging. Your mom can be nagging. Your dad can be nagging. Your job, your boss can be nagging. Customers can be nagging unto death. It doesn't mean you died. Jonah 4:9. And God said to Jonah, doest thou well to be angry for the gourd? And he said, I do well to be angry even unto death. He's complaining unto death, right? He's mad unto death. We know Jonah didn't die because of the gourd, but he was upset and he was voicing his opinion unto death. He's complaining, right? You see, when you can cross-reference so many different verses and so many different ways to look at this, you can put things in so much perspective. So let's go to the New Testament. Matthew 26:38. Then said he unto them, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even unto death. Tarry ye here and watch with me. Did Jesus die here, or was he just stressed out unto death? What's happening here? He's crying and praying that he don't want to do this, right? He's sweating blood. My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, just like Hannah. I'm very troubled, even unto death. So when you see he poured out his soul unto death, and then it tells you he was making supplication and basically intervening on behalf of the people, he was in an intense prayer unto death. He didn't have to die. Bearing sin does not mean you die. And we've covered all this in the previous verses. So right here in the New Testament, Jesus is praying unto death. He's pouring out his soul unto death. My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even unto death. Pouring out his soul in intense prayer unto death. The servant in Isaiah 53 is crying or pouring out his soul in intense prayer and supplication for the people, just like Daniel and Moses. Hosea 14:2. We know there's so many chapters that explain these things. And I think sometimes Christians are just not aware of them because they're not taught in church because people start asking too many questions. Hosea 14:2. Take words with you and return to the Lord. Say to him, take away all the iniquity, receive us graciously, for we will offer the sacrifices of our lips. That can become a very intense prayer. Take words with you. Now, can you pour out your soul to God? Of course. We've seen it. We've seen the verses to prove it. Psalm 62:8. Trust in him at all times, you people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Selah. Pour out your heart. Can you really pour out your heart? Do you die when you do that? Pour out your heart before him. Unto death, even. Numbers 11:2. Then the people cried out to Moses, and when Moses prayed to the Lord, the fire was quenched. When Moses prayed to the Lord, the fire was quenched. So Moses prayed. Did he pour out his soul unto death? Doesn't say that, but the Most High listened, because when he did it, the fire stopped, right? You want to think Daniel poured out his soul when he was in the lion's den and the Most High heard him and sent the angel? Jesus did not have to die. That's another point. Numbers 14:19-20. Pardon the iniquity of this people, I pray, according to the greatness of your mercy, just as you have forgiven this people from Egypt, even until now. Then the Lord said, I have pardoned according to your word. So if Moses can get people pardoned according to his word, I'm sure Christians will say Jesus was greater than Moses, right? So why did he have to die? And Moses just prayed. Deuteronomy 9:20. And the Lord was very angry with Aaron and would have destroyed him. So I prayed for Aaron also at the same time. He prayed for Aaron not be destroyed. Prayer. 2 Chronicles 30:27. Then the priests, the Levites, arose and blessed the people, and their voice was heard, and their prayer came up to his holy dwelling place, even unto heaven. So we see the power of prayer goes up into the holy dwelling. The book of Hebrews tries to say, oh, Jesus went into the Holy of Holies in heaven, because on earth he's not allowed, right? The stranger should be put to death when he who comes near. Because when the son of David tried to offer incense in the temple, he was struck with leprosy. So we see, even if you were king, a Messiah, an anointed king, you cannot do what the Levites do in the temple. They warned him, this is only for us. So Jesus couldn't have gone into the Holy of Holies and did what the book of Hebrews describes. But here, it says the priest just prayed. So he didn't have to do that. He could have just prayed if it was that serious, right? Why not? He did not have to die on behalf of the people. He could have poured out his soul unto death, like he did in the Garden of Gethsemane before they came. His soul was exceedingly sorrowful unto death. He did not have to die. So we see clearly here that when you read the verses in context and cross-reference them, you can understand what's really being said here. So sometimes unto death can have a different meaning in context. But when we read about Isaiah 53, it says, knowledge will justify the people. Not death, not his death, not blood, because a Messiah can be a priest, a Messiah can be a king, a Messiah can be a prophet, a Messiah can be a Gentile. Cyrus was a Messiah, and Cyrus gave them the ability to go back to Israel to worship God. Now, that doesn't make him a Torah scholar, but I'm pretty sure everybody is expecting the true Messiah of Israel to be a Torah scholar, right? I'm pretty sure that's what people are expecting. And that's why his knowledge will justify many. It won't be his death. Now, Can the death of somebody do things? Yes, it can cause others to repent. And we've covered this in the same chapter. When somebody dies, people actually straighten up a little bit. You know, you're at the funeral, you're seeing somebody in the casket. It makes you think about some things. You know, you might even repent on the spot, or, you know, might not be in the moment, but later on that day, you know, you might have some thoughts. So, you know, with that being said, this is part one. Part three, we'll cover that number being numbered with the transgressors in part uh, 4 and 5. For part 1 and 2, I wanted to break this up, just open up the doors for the thought process to go. So, with that being said, shout out to the Tanakh family. Thanks, William, for allowing me to do this again. And we'll see you next time. Thank you. Shalom.